1892, Kentucky. The Blackwood family. Every son died on the same night, but their ghosts walked together. In the autumn of 1892, deep in the heart of Kentucky, something happened that would forever change the small town of Ashwood Grove. The Blackwood family, one of the most respected and wealthy families in the region, was struck by a tragedy so mysterious, so inexplicable, that even today, over a century later, no one has been able to fully explain what happened on that terrible October night. What you're about to hear is a story pieced together from old photographs, newspaper clippings, personal diaries, and witness testimonies. A puzzle where some pieces remain forever missing, leaving us to wonder what really happened to the Blackwood children. Before we dive into this chilling mystery, if you enjoy stories about historical mysteries and unexplained events, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And hey, I'm also developing another channel focused on true crime stories from the Victorian era. You can find the link in the description below. The year was 1892, and Ashwood Grove, Kentucky, was experiencing its own version of the Gilded Age. The town had grown prosperous from tobacco farming and the recent arrival of the railroad. At the center of this prosperity stood the Blackwood Estate, a magnificent three-story Victorian mansion that crowned Willow Hill like a jewel. Harrison Blackwood had built his fortune through shrewd business dealings in tobacco and real estate. At 45, he was a commanding figure with steel-gray eyes and a carefully groomed beard that had begun to show threads of silver. His wife, Margaret, was 15 years his junior, a beauty from Louisville society who had brought both refinement and substantial dowry to their union. But the true treasures of the Blackwood household were their 5 children. There was William, the eldest at 16, already showing his father's business acumen. The twins, Sarah and Samuel, were 14, Sarah with her mother's delicate features and Samuel with his father's strong jaw. Then came little Alice, 10 years old, who loved nothing more than playing her piano in the sun-drenched music room. The youngest was Thomas, just 7, but already reading at a level that impressed even the stern headmaster at Ashwood Academy. The family was, by all accounts, the picture of Victorian perfection. They attended the First Presbyterian Church every Sunday, hosted elaborate dinner parties for the town's elite, and were known for their charitable contributions to the local orphanage. Margaret Blackwood's garden parties were the highlight of the social season, and Harrison's business advice was sought by aspiring entrepreneurs throughout the county. Yet beneath this gilded surface, there were whispers. Servants spoke in hushed tones about Harrison's late-night meetings in his study, where strange men would arrive after dark, their faces hidden beneath wide-brimmed hats. The children, usually so lively and social, had begun to withdraw in the weeks leading up to that fateful October night. Mrs. Eleanor Pritchard, who lived in the neighboring estate, would later testify that she had seen the Blackwood children playing in their garden on October 13th, just 2 days before the tragedy. They seemed different, she would tell investigators. They moved together like a single entity, always staying close, always watching each other. And they were so quiet. Children shouldn't be that quiet. The household staff had noticed changes too. Mary O'Brien, the family's Irish cook, reported that the children had stopped eating properly. They'd push their food around their plates, she recalled years later, and they'd look at each other with these knowing glances, like they shared a secret none of us adults could understand. Even more disturbing were the drawings. Alice, the artistic one, had always loved to sketch. But in those final weeks, her cheerful pictures of flowers and butterflies had given way to disturbing images. Her governess, Miss Catherine Wells, had found dozens of drawings hidden beneath Alice's bed, all depicting the same scene: 5 children standing in a circle, holding hands, with darkness spreading from the center like spilled ink. The local physician, Dr. James Morrison, had been called to the house several times in early October. The children, he noted in his journal, seemed to be suffering from a shared malady: pale skin, dark circles under their eyes, and a strange lethargy that seemed to grip them all simultaneously. Yet he could find no medical cause for their condition. "It was as if they were fading," he wrote. "Not from any disease I could identify, but from something that seemed to drain their very essence. I prescribed tonics and rest, but I knew in my heart that whatever ailed those children was beyond the reach of medical science." The last photograph of the Blackwood children was taken on October 14th, 1892, the day before they died. It shows all 5 of them posed in the parlor, dressed in their Sunday finest. But it's their eyes that haunt anyone who looks at that image. They stare directly at the camera with an intensity that seems to pierce through time itself. And if you look closely, very closely, you can see that they're all holding hands, forming a chain that seems unbreakable even in that frozen moment. Pause for effect. If you're finding this story as captivating as I am, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me bring you more mysteries like this one. October 15th, 1892 began like any other Saturday in the Blackwood household. The servants rose before dawn to begin their daily routines. Mary O'Brien started preparing breakfast in the kitchen while the housemaids began cleaning the lower floors. Everything seemed normal until they realized the house was too quiet. By 7 a.m., when the children should have been stirring, not a sound came from the upper floors. Miss Wells, the governess, climbed the stairs to wake her charges for their morning lessons. What she found would haunt her for the rest of her days. The children's bedrooms were empty, their beds unslept in. But the windows were locked from the inside, and there was no sign of struggle or disturbance. It was as if the children had simply vanished into thin air. The alarm was raised immediately. Harrison Blackwood, still in his nightclothes, burst from his study, where he had apparently spent the entire night. Witnesses would later describe his face as grey as ash, and note that his hands trembled uncontrollably as he searched room after room, calling his children's names. The search began in earnest. Every room, every closet, every corner of the massive house was examined. The grounds were scoured by a growing crowd of servants and neighbors who had heard the commotion. The local sheriff, Samuel Hartford, was summoned, and by noon half the town had joined the search. It was young Timothy Walsh, the stable boy, who made the discovery. In the old carriage house, behind a wall of abandoned furniture and dusty trunks, he found a narrow door that no one remembered seeing before. The door was slightly ajar, and from beyond it came a strange, sweet smell, like flowers left too long in a vase. Sheriff Hartford pushed through first, his lantern held high. The door opened onto a narrow staircase that descended into darkness. The walls were stone, far older than the carriage house itself, suggesting this passage had been here long before the Blackwoods built their estate. The stairs led to a circular chamber carved from the living rock, and there, in the center of that terrible room, they found them. All 5 Blackwood children lay in a perfect circle, their hands clasped, their eyes closed as if in peaceful sleep. They wore white nightgowns that seemed to glow in the lantern light. There was no sign of violence, no indication of how they had died. They simply lay there, still and cold, like figures carved from marble. But that wasn't the worst of it. The walls of the chamber were covered in symbols, strange geometric patterns that hurt to look at, interspersed with what appeared to be writing in a language no one could identify. And in the very center of the circle, formed by the children's bodies, the stone floor had been carved with an intricate design that seemed to shift and move in the flickering light. Dr. Morrison was called immediately. His examination revealed no obvious cause of death. No wounds, no signs of poisoning, no indication of suffocation. The children appeared to have simply stopped living, all at the exact same moment. Their expressions, he would later write in his private journal, were not those of children who had suffered. They seemed almost expectant, as if they were waiting for something that never came. The discovery of the bodies was just the beginning of the mystery. How had the children accessed this hidden chamber? The door Timothy had found showed no signs of recent use. The dust and debris had clearly been undisturbed for years, perhaps decades. Yet there were no other entrances to the underground room. Even more puzzling were the items found with the children. Each child clutched a small object in their free hand, the hand not holding their siblings. William held an old iron key that fit no lock in the house. Sarah gripped a small mirror that reflected no images. Samuel's fingers were wrapped around a compass that spun wildly, never settling on north. Alice held a music box that played no tune anyone recognized. And little Thomas clutched a photograph, but the image was so faded and strange that no one could make out what it depicted. Margaret Blackwood collapsed upon seeing her children and had to be carried back to the house. She would not speak for days afterward, and when she finally did, her words made little sense. She spoke of promises broken, of prices unpaid, of a hunger that could never be satisfied. Harrison Blackwood, meanwhile, locked himself in his study and refused to come out. Through the door, servants could hear him pacing, muttering, occasionally crying out in anguish. When Sheriff Hartford finally forced the door 3 days later, they found the room in chaos, papers burned in the fireplace, books torn apart, and Harrison himself gone, having apparently escaped through the window. He left behind only a note, scrawled in a shaking hand. "I thought I could cheat them. I thought love was stronger. I was wrong. May God forgive me, for they never will." The Blackwood mansion was sealed after the funeral. The 5 white coffins were laid to rest in Ashwood Grove Cemetery on a grey October morning, as half the town stood in silent witness. Margaret Blackwood, dressed in deep mourning, stood like a statue throughout the service, her eyes fixed on something no one else could see. But the burial did not bring peace. Within days of the funeral, strange reports began to surface. James Macready, the cemetery groundskeeper, was the first to speak of it, though it took several whiskies before he would tell his tale. "I was locking the gates just after sunset," he told the crowd at Murphy's Tavern. "The fog was rolling in thick, and I was eager to get home. That's when I heard it, children singing. It was soft at first, like it was coming from far away, but I knew that tune. It was Ring Around the Rosie, but different, slower, sadder." Macready had followed the sound, his hands shaking as he held his lantern high. The singing led him to the Blackwood family plot, where 5 fresh graves lay beneath a massive oak tree. "I saw them," he whispered, his face pale even in the tavern's warm light. All 5 of them, standing in a circle around their own graves. They were holding hands, just like they were when we found them. They were translucent like morning mist, but I could see every detail, their white nightgowns, their bare feet, their faces. He paused, downing another whiskey before continuing. Their eyes were open this time, black as coal, all of them, and they were looking right at me. Then the youngest one, little Thomas, he smiled, and they vanished just like that. But the singing continued for hours. Macready wasn't the only one to encounter the Blackwood children after their death. Sarah Mills, who lived in a cottage near the cemetery, reported seeing 5 small figures walking hand in hand along the road at midnight. They moved without touching the ground, she claimed, floating inches above the packed earth. They were heading toward town, she told anyone who would listen, moving with purpose, like they had somewhere important to be. I called out to them, "God help me, I don't know why," and they stopped. All 5 heads turned to look at me in perfect unison. Then the one in the middle, one of the twins, I think, raised a finger to her lips. "Shh," she said, though I heard it in my mind rather than with my ears. "We're not finished yet." As autumn deepened into winter, the sightings multiplied. The children were seen in various locations throughout Ashwood Grove, always together, always holding hands. They appeared in the town square at midnight, circling the fountain. They were spotted in the windows of the abandoned Blackwood mansion, moving from room to room as if searching for something. One terrified farmer reported seeing them in his field, standing among the withered cornstalks, their white gowns glowing in the moonlight. But it was what happened at the First Presbyterian Church that truly shook the town to its core. Reverend Michael Thornton was preparing his sermon late one November evening when he heard the church doors open. This was not unusual. Parishioners often came to pray at odd hours, but the footsteps that followed were wrong. Too light, too many. And they were accompanied by that now familiar singing. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies. The Reverend found them in the sanctuary, arranged in their eternal circle before the altar. But this time, they were not alone. In the center of their circle stood a figure made of shadow, tall, impossibly thin, with eyes that burned like cold stars. They were offering something to it, Reverend Thornton would later tell his bishop. Each child held up their token, the key, the mirror, the compass, the music box, the photograph. The shadow figure reached out with hands that seemed to stretch like smoke, touching each item in turn. And as it did, the children became more solid, more real. Their black eyes began to show color again. Their skin took on the flush of life. But then the church bells began to ring, midnight striking with bronze voices. The shadow figure recoiled as if burned, and the children's circle broke. They scattered like leaves before a wind, passing through the walls as if they weren't there. The Reverend found himself alone, shaking on the floor, with only the lingering scent of dead flowers to prove he hadn't dreamed it all. Leave a comment below about what you think is really happening with the Blackwood children. I'd love to hear your theories. The town was in the grip of terror. Families barred their doors at nightfall. Children were forbidden to play outside after dark. The sheriff organized patrols, but what could mortal men do against spirits that walked through walls and vanished like smoke? Then Margaret Blackwood emerged from her seclusion with a startling claim. "They're not ghosts," she announced to a hastily assembled town meeting. Her appearance shocked those present. Her once beautiful face was gaunt, her eyes wild, her hair streaked with premature white. "My children are not dead, not truly. They're caught between, trapped in a bargain their father made." She spoke of Harrison's obsession with the occult, of books ordered from Europe, of midnight rituals in his study. She told of a visitor who came to their home in the spring of 1892, a man who called himself Mr. Ash and claimed to represent certain interested parties. "Harrison wanted immortality," Margaret said, her voice breaking. "Not for himself, for the children. He couldn't bear the thought of them growing old, dying, leaving us. Mr. Ash offered him a way, a ritual, a binding. Harrison thought he was so clever, thought he could take what was offered without paying the price. The price, she explained, was service. The children would live forever, yes, but they would belong to Mr. Ash and his masters. They would be servants in a realm beyond human understanding. Their innocence and purity put to use is too terrible to contemplate." "Harrison tried to break the bargain," Margaret continued. "He thought he had found a way. But the children had already begun to change. They could hear the calling. They knew what was coming for them. And so they chose their own way out, or so they thought." By December 1892, word of the Blackwood haunting had spread beyond Ashwood Grove. Newspapers from Louisville to Lexington carried sensational accounts of the ghost children of Kentucky. The stories attracted the attention of Dr. Marcus Webb, a professor of philosophy and paranormal studies at Harvard University. Dr. Webb arrived in Ashwood Grove on December 15th, exactly 2 months after the children's deaths. He was a thin, precise man in his 50s, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles and a skeptical bent that had debunked dozens of supposed hauntings across New England. "I come not to validate your ghosts," he announced at his first meeting with town officials, "but to find the truth behind them. In my experience, there is always a rational explanation for seemingly supernatural events." He established his base of operations in the town's small hotel and immediately set about interviewing witnesses. His methodology was thorough and scientific. Each account was carefully documented, cross-referenced, and analyzed for inconsistencies. He mapped the sightings, looking for patterns. He examined the underground chamber where the children were found, taking careful measurements and making detailed sketches of the mysterious symbols. It was in the Blackwood mansion itself that Dr. Webb made his first significant discovery. The house had been sealed since the tragedy, but he obtained permission from Margaret Blackwood, now residing with relatives, to conduct a thorough investigation. In Harrison's study, behind a false panel, Dr. Webb found a cache of documents that shed new light on the months leading up to the children's deaths. There were letters in various languages, Latin, German, and others, that even the learned professor couldn't identify. There were diagrams of complex geometric patterns that seemed to match those found in the underground chamber, and there was a journal written in Harrison's increasingly erratic hand. The journal told a story of obsession and desperation. Harrison had indeed been dabbling in the occult, driven by a fear of mortality that bordered on madness. He wrote of correspondence with secret societies in Europe, of books purchased from shadowy dealers, of experiments conducted in the dead of night. The mysterious Mr. Ash first appeared in the journal in March 1892. Harrison described him as a gentleman of indeterminate age, with the bearing of nobility and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of centuries. Mr. Ash claimed to represent an ancient order that possessed knowledge dating back to before recorded history. "He offers what I have sought," Harrison wrote, "a way to preserve innocence eternal. My children need never know the corruption of age, the decay of body and spirit. They can remain pure, perfect forever." The ritual was complex, requiring specific ingredients, celestial alignments, and, most crucially, the willing participation of the subjects. This last requirement seemed to trouble Harrison greatly. "How can I ask my children to choose eternity when they cannot truly understand what they forfeit?" he wrote in one anguished entry. "Yet Mr. Ash assures me that their consent, once given, cannot be revoked, not by them, not by me, not by God himself." If you're finding this investigation as fascinating as Dr. Webb did, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you won't miss the conclusion of this mystery. Dr. Webb's investigation took a darker turn when he discovered evidence that the children had, indeed, been prepared for the ritual. There were receipts for strange purchases, herbs and minerals not typically found in Kentucky, items ordered from occult suppliers in New Orleans and San Francisco. There were notes about dietary restrictions imposed on the children, baths in specially prepared waters, and incantations they were taught to recite. But it was a letter from Mr. Ash, dated October 1st, that revealed the horrifying truth. The ritual had been completed, partially. The children had been bound to the service of Mr. Ash's masters, but the final step, their physical transformation, had been interrupted. "Your attempt to break our compact has had unfortunate consequences," Mr. Ash wrote. "The children exist now in a state between states. They are neither fully alive nor properly dead, neither completely human nor entirely other. This liminal existence causes them considerable distress. They seek completion of the ritual, yet they also seek escape from it. They are, in essence, at war with themselves." Dr. Webb shared his findings with the town officials and with Margaret Blackwood. Her reaction was immediate and violent. "I knew it," she screamed, tearing at her hair. "I told Harrison not to trust that man, that thing, but he was so certain, so sure he could outwit ancient powers. And now our babies are trapped, suffering, calling out for help that we cannot give." The professor pressed her for more information. What had happened on the night of October 15th? How had the children ended up in that underground chamber? Margaret's account, given through tears, was fragmentary but revealing. Harrison had discovered too late the true nature of the bargain he had made. The children would live forever, yes, but as slaves to entities that existed outside normal reality. They would be used as conduits, bridges between worlds, their innocence and purity, making them perfect vessels for beings that could not otherwise manifest in our reality. He tried to break the binding, Margaret sobbed. He found a counter-ritual in one of his cursed books. But it required sacrifice, his own life for theirs. He was prepared to do it, but the children, they knew. Somehow they knew what was happening to them, what they were becoming, and they chose their own path. The underground chamber, she revealed, was old, far older than the Blackwood estate. It had been a sacred site for the indigenous peoples who once lived in the area, a place where the veil between worlds was thin. The children had found it weeks before their death, drawn by dreams and visions. They believed that if they died there in that place of power, while holding the tokens Mr. Ash had given them, they could break the binding, Margaret explained. They thought they could escape both the transformation and the servitude, but they were wrong. Oh God, they were so wrong. As winter deepened, the haunting of Ashwood Grove intensified. The Blackwood children were seen nightly now, their manifestations growing stronger and more disturbing. They no longer simply walked and sang. They began to interact with the living in terrifying ways. Children reported being beckoned to join their circle. Adults heard whispers in the darkness, promising secrets and threatening consequences. Animals fled when the ghost children approached, and plants withered in their presence. The very air seemed to grow cold and thick when they manifested, as if reality itself recoiled from their unnatural existence. Dr. Webb, despite his initial skepticism, could not deny the evidence before him. He had personally witnessed the children on 3 separate occasions, and his scientific instruments, magnetometers, thermometers, and early photographic equipment, had recorded anomalies that defied conventional explanation. His final report, published in the Journal of Paranormal Research, concluded that the Blackwood children represented a unique metaphysical phenomenon, entities caught between states of being, unable to fully manifest in either realm. They appear to be seeking resolution to their condition, but the means of achieving such resolution remains unclear. The town, meanwhile, was reaching a breaking point. Several families had already fled Ashwood Grove, and more were preparing to leave. Business suffered as travelers avoided the haunted town. The sheriff begged anyone who could help to come forward with a solution. It was then that Margaret Blackwood made her final, desperate revelation. "Harrison didn't die," she announced to a packed town meeting on the winter solstice. "He's still alive, hiding, searching for a way to complete what he started. He believes that if he can finish the counter-ritual, he can either save the children or grant them true death. But Mr. Ash is hunting him, and Harrison dare not reveal himself." She produced a letter, arrived just that morning, written in Harrison's distinctive hand. "My dearest Margaret, I have failed our children once through hubris and again through cowardice. But I will not fail them a third time. I have found allies among those who oppose Mr. Ash and his kind. On the night of the new moon, I will return to complete what I began. The children must be gathered at the chamber. They must be willing, and the town must be prepared for what may come. Either our babies will be freed, or something far worse will be unleashed. Pray for us all." The night of the new moon, December 28, 1892, arrived with an unseasonable warmth and a fog so thick it seemed solid. The entire town gathered near the Blackwood estate, armed with whatever protections their various faiths provided. Dr. Webb was there with his instruments. Reverend Thornton led prayers. Sheriff Hartford organized a perimeter, though no one was quite sure what they were guarding against. At exactly midnight, Harrison Blackwood emerged from the fog. He was greatly changed, thin to the point of emaciation, his hair completely white, his eyes holding a feverish gleam. He carried an ancient book bound in black leather and a satchel of mysterious implements. "Where are my children?" he called out, his voice carrying despite its weakness. As if summoned, they appeared, 5 small figures materializing from the mist, still holding hands, still dressed in white. But now their appearance flickered between the children they had been and something else. Something with too many angles, too many shadows, features that hurt to perceive directly. Harrison approached them slowly, tears streaming down his face. "My babies," he whispered. "My beautiful babies. I'm so sorry. I'm here to make it right." The children regarded him with their black eyes, and when they spoke it was in unison, their voices layered and strange. "Too late, Father. We are becoming. We are unbecoming. We are caught between the promise and the price." "No," Harrison said firmly. "There is another way. I've learned much in my exile. The binding can be broken, but only if you choose it. Only if you release the tokens and reject what you're becoming." The children looked at each other, their forms flickering more rapidly now. In the distance, a sound like thunder rolled across the sky, though no lightning flashed. The fog began to swirl, forming shapes that defied description. "He comes," the children said. "Mr. Ash comes to claim what was promised." And indeed, a figure emerged from the fog, tall, impossibly thin, dressed in a coat that seemed to be cut from midnight itself. Mr. Ash's face was human only in the most technical sense. It was a mask of perfection that suggested terrible things beneath. "Harrison Blackwood," Mr. Ash said, his voice like grinding stone. "You have led me a merry chase, but all debts come due in the end. What happened next remains a matter of debate among the witnesses. Some say Harrison began the counter-ritual, chanting in languages that predated human speech. Others claim the children themselves took action, throwing down their tokens and breaking their circle for the first time since their death. Dr. Webb's instruments went wild, recording electromagnetic fluctuations and temperature variations that should have been impossible. The fog turned colors that had no names, and reality seemed to fold in on itself. When it was over, and accounts vary on how long it lasted, from minutes to hours, Harrison Blackwood lay dead on the ground, the black book reduced to ashes beside him. Mr. Ash was gone, though some claimed to see his shadow fleeing into the night. And the children. The children were nowhere to be found. Some say they were freed, their spirits finally able to move on to whatever awaits innocent souls. Others believe they were claimed after all, drawn into Mr. Ash's realm to serve their eternal sentence. A few whisper that they still walk the earth, no longer bound to Ashwood Grove, but not yet free, searching for others who might fall into similar bargains. The Blackwood mansion was torn down in the spring of 1893. The underground chamber was filled with concrete and sacred salt. Margaret Blackwood left Kentucky and was never heard from again, though some say she spent her remaining years warning others about the dangers of bargaining with forces beyond human understanding. But on certain nights, particularly on the anniversary of their death, people still report seeing 5 children walking hand in hand along the old roads of Kentucky. They no longer sing their mournful song, but they watch with eyes that hold too much knowledge for one so young. And sometimes, just sometimes, they stop and whisper a warning to those who will listen. Some prices are too high to pay, even for love. Some bargains should never be made, and some mysteries are better left unsolved. Dr. Webb returned to Harvard, but never published another paper on the paranormal. In his private notes, discovered after his death, he wrote, "I came to Ashwood Grove a skeptic and left a believer, not in ghosts or spirits, but in the existence of forces and entities that operate outside our understanding of reality." The Blackwood children were caught between worlds, victims of their father's hubris and their own innocence. Whether they found peace or further torment, I cannot say. I know only that their story serves as a warning. There are doors that should not be opened, and prices that should not be paid, no matter how tempting the reward. And there you have it, the chilling tale of the Blackwood children, a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. Were they truly caught between worlds? Did Harrison's final ritual free them or doom them? And what exactly was Mr. Ash, and who were the masters he served? These questions continue to haunt historians and paranormal researchers. The photographs from that era show only shadows and suggestions. The documents raise more questions than they answer. And the witnesses, long dead now, took many secrets to their graves. What do you think really happened to the Blackwood children? Was it a supernatural tragedy, or is there a rational explanation we're missing? I'd love to hear your theories in the comments below. Every perspective helps us piece together these historical mysteries. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of Kentucky's most chilling mysteries, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with anyone who loves a good historical mystery. Your support helps me research and bring you more fascinating stories from America's hidden past. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. I have so many more mysteries to share with you, from haunted photographs to unexplained disappearances, from Victorian seances to modern-day enigmas. You won't want to miss a single one. Until next time, remember, some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved, and sometimes the questions are more important than the answers. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep exploring the shadows of history. Thank you for watching. End screen with subscribe button and suggested videos.